Helo pawb a chroeso I noson cynta hybrid sgwrs presenoldeb gan Artistiaid TROIICA, sef Anthony a Rita Ann a Brian Baker. So please welcome and thank you all for joining us tonight for our first hybrid talk, where we've got the artist of the current exhibition Presence by TROIICA Group, which is Anthony, Rita Ann and Brian Baker, who are joining us tonight. So what I was saying before we started recording was, if you've got questions, great, but we're going to try and keep them all to the end. So, but please do put your hands up or feel free to ask questions after everyone's finished their presentations. So, just I ddeud, da ni'n falch iawn fod yr arddangosfa yma wedi dod. Mae wedi bod yn 2 flynedd o ddisgwyl ar gyfer yr arddangosfa yma hefyd. A mae o'n werth I weld achos mae'n defnyddio'r gofod mewn ffordd hollol wahanol eto, a mae'n dod o 3 artist difyr iawn at ei gilydd. Ond dwi'n mynd I siarad gormod amdano fo achos mae'r 3 ohonyn nhw yma. So just to reiterate, we've been very excited about this exhibition. It's been 2 years in the waiting again, and it's by 3 exciting artists. And I'm not going to say too much about it, but it's been a great use of the space, and obviously it deals with a really important matter that we all deal with, or matters that we deal with on a daily basis. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you to the first person. Dwi'n mynd I basio chi drosodd I Rita I wneud eich gyflwyniad hi. Diolch fawr.
Helo pawb. Fel ydom yna Rita Trwy ac yn aelod o'r collaboration TROIICA. Ti eisiau fi ddarllen hwnna allan? So mae'r introduction I ddechrau yn Saesneg amdan TROIICA. We are Brian, Rita and Anthony, and together we form TROIICA, a group of artists that work both collaboratively and as well as individually. Myself and Rita have known each other, myself, the Anthony, by the way, have known each other since our studies in Bangor, and we met Brian during our studies in Glyndŵr University, Wrecsam. We were drawn to each other naturally, and through our discussions, we realized commonality in our thinking, thematic approaches to practice, as well as similarities in our individual experience. I'll continue now in English, because I think 1 or 2 of us online are in English. So, Anthony, dwi'n gymlaen y screen. Thank you. Technician hefyd. Right, I would class myself as a multidisciplinary artist. It all depends on what inspires the work, basically, and what is available to hand. Pardon the pun about the hand being in the image. Material is very important, finding stuff, coming across items on the shelf. I might be out shopping and get really drawn to something either by colour, shape, size, form, whatever. And especially if there's a multiple of those items, like different colours, If I see a shelf full of wool, it's a need and a necessity in me to be able to have one of each. I can't sort of define which one I prefer the best, because they all mean different things, if you understand what I mean. I'll buy them, these items, without having any idea of why or what I'm going to use them for. Like I said, they have emotions and feelings in them. They'll stir things past memories of something I've seen somebody else going through, as well as personally. Drawn a lot to all the migration and immigrants in the country and the things they're going through, as well as disabilities. Having a son who's got learning needs. I've seen all the barriers that he's come across growing up through his education and social life. This body of work is entitled Names Will Always Hurt Me. It started off as, lost my space now. I did start looking into the murder of Sarah Everard in London, and the police response to the vigil held thereafter. And I was devastated by the way women were treated by the police, not only policemen, but police women as well, if you can say that these days. But after many group discussions with my colleagues, I realised that I needed to hone in on what was important to me in this project we had, mainly the master's qualification. And I narrowed it down to self-portraiture. I knew it had to be abstract, and I was going to use the materials I found. Always been inspired by people like Tracy Emin. Even before I thought of going into producing artworks for myself, from a young age, she was the first artist that sort of grasped my attention, with the famous bed, of course. But her first works are more important to me than her painting in recent days. Also, I like the work of Lydia Barlow because of recycling works. She'll put a show together, then she'll dismantle everything and then put them back together again to produce new work. I like that idea and have used that method myself. And then the work of Anna Mendieta, the wife of Carl Andre, who has also inspired some of the works here, especially the roses in the crochet piece, which have now died as well. She made a piece, covered herself in roses and things, which was significant to the work. So to get started, I was looking for exhibitions to open back up, and I was really inspired by the work in Artist Monday 9 Cardiff. The larger image is Bob Happy's work, which is a female artist from Africa, especially the Senegal. But she's lived in Wales and worked in Wales, and that's the significance of the Welsh blanket underneath. And I quite like this nod to our culture in her work. And then Prakpa Pachputi is an Indian gentleman who's done a lot of drawings and paintings, but using imagery that is significant to myself. He's got a lot of textiles in his work and other oddments that I like. So I was inspired by those two. I went on from there to see the show of Veronica Ryan. It's by Kyle and Bristol. Bristol in itself was very inspirational with street art, posters. Frank Bowling was on in one of the galleries, which was very inspirational towards the colour theme in my work. I quite like the use of mixed colours. Veronica Ryan is very significant in the Black Lives Matter. She's done a project in London on the Windrush project. So she's worth looking up if you're interested in that sort of work. This is what I produced for those of you who haven't been able to see the show. You will need your volume up for this, possibly, to hear the sound. So that's what I called the self-portraits in the show, even though the body of work is called Names Will Always Hurt Me. The sound you can hear is not actually in the show because unfortunately during installation, we all got knocked back with COVID after 2 years of keeping nice and safe. Our first installation brought on the lurgy. So the sound isn't actually with the piece in the gallery space, but that's how it was initially set up. Now I've got a quote from Michel Foucault, if I pronounce that properly, which is something I carry with me, and it helps me have some sort of confidence in what I am doing. Sorry, technical hiccup.
Joys of technology.
Okay. So I initially started playing around. During the making process, there's always some sort of sayings that come back to me that somebody said, especially when I'm wrapping wrapping things up in string or thread. And they all relate to what I'm actually doing to the piece, how it looks to me, or what it might eventually represent. Like here you might see the actual saying, "Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me." For the title, I just played around with that saying, or "Don't air your dirty laundry." And I think one of them's called, well, I know one of them's called "Hang them out to dry." So, yeah, that's how I work, really. It's still not going forward. Please don't switch to another channel.
Ti'n gallu dweud...
Pass it over.
That's the next one, actually. It is something very well. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Inspirations also come from the landscape. You know, out in the landscape, we might see an old bed frame, which is used as a gate. Things trapped in a telegraph pole. That photograph of the telegraph pole inspired me so much and enthralled me. It gave me some hope. I just love the freedom of the plastic bag flowing in the wind, which inspired the use of raffia on the stick. Materials, these are a few of different materials and mediums I've used it in the past, from collected found objects, trees, nature, the sea, plastic bags. Culture is very important for me. The pattern on this self-portrait is actually drilled. The holes for the sticks were drilled out in the Carnarvon pattern of the Welsh blanket. So that was my nod to the culture part of it. The video in the gallery is about time and spending mundane time in the kitchen. A lot of my works are about gender-specific items, the use of the household objects and plastic bags. And the things, I am a bit of a hoarder. I keep things in the back of cupboards and things which I bring out every now and again, which are full of memories and inspire work and hopefully future works. I look into the human relationships of people together, and they stir up feelings of entrapment, escapism, and love. And there's a video playing here now of one of them. This is another video of a piece in the works, well, in the installation. It's called Let Me Dream. This is in a different venue and it can only be appreciated really through video because photographing it in the space doesn't seem to do it justice. You've either got to see it personally or view the movement. And that is it, I think. Oh, one more, which isn't on show in Carnarvon, but was part of the body of work. A lot of this was inspired by the graffiti and things I saw out on the streets in Bristol. It's got a projection of words that were relevant to the piece. There we are. Thank you very much for listening to me. For that.
Diolch yn fawr, Rita. Sorry about that, everyone. Technical issues. I was just making sure that everybody could hear me everywhere. There, that's all that was. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Rita, really interesting. And obviously I've been following your work for years, so I'm quite familiar with it. But I don't know if anybody else has got any questions or comments they want to make right now before we move on to the second presentation. Anybody? No? Okay. Okay. Oh. Okay. You can say it now if you want, Rach, but to you.
Yeah, I was just interested in the materials. Like my years, and it's obvious to me got like an affinity with like textile. And I wondered, is that instinctive or is there a conscious choice? If so, what's the... No, it's mostly instinctive because of the environment of the work.
You know, like I said, it was later in life that I got into art, but always made my own stuff, knitting, sewing, crocheting, you name it, DIY jobs, I used to make them. And I enjoy working with materials and what I can do with them. I like the manipulation, you know, yeah, that's what I enjoy. Yeah, that's what I'm drawn to. But then I want to challenge that by using different materials and trying to do the same, especially crossing the border between gender specific roles and materials. You know, we always think of the building materials as a male's environment, but I want to challenge that, and I might introduce things like that into the work as well, just in order to influence it as such. And yeah, play. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, so we'll leave it for Rachel. No, I'm getting mixed up with my two names. It's all going well. It's too many functions. I can't do it. So diolch yn fawr iawn Rita, mi adael o fan'na mwan. So we're just going to leave it there with Rita for a minute and move on to the next person before I have a fit. So the next person is Anthony. I can't say it. Anthony. And Anthony's basically the person that oh my god, which catalyst sort of thing to this sort of exhibition and brought the project together, and the initiator of the exhibition is what I was trying to think. That's the word. So without further ado, I'm going to let Anthony take over and I'm going to stop rambling. Okay. Diolch yn fawr. Ti eisiau da?
I don't know if everybody can hear me on Zoom, but I know you two can. I'm aware that there might be some delay on Zoom with video playing. It might be a bit bitty and jerky, but for you present here, you're okay. So yeah, we're TROIICA, collection of artists that work collaboratively and individually, and that's me. So I grew up in an industrial village on Anglesey. This image was just down the road from where I grew up, and this was sort of my playground, basically. It was somewhere I enjoyed exploring, and my childhood really formed my interest in developing my work as an artist, where I would explore abandoned work sites or factories and stuff like that. And through development of technology and camera phones, I was able to capture images that interested me. And these two pieces are quite early pieces, but not from childhood. But this sort of work developed into more of abandonment, and in particular factories and work sites that were rich with fertility and sort of hostile environments, really, and how nature interacted with both man-made and continued its journey. And I look into environments that have been abandoned through history, such as Denbigh Asylum and Mhrifysgol Hospital. And some of these places, particularly the Mhrifysgol Hospital, the pink corridor here, has a deep personal connection to my own family history. And this sort of work developed into one of the pieces that I have in the gallery. This is one of the most recent ones. I've not put sound on it, but there is sound. And I've dedicated this piece to the Ukraine. I was born in 1986, nearly 6 months after the Chernobyl disaster. And I feel that that radiation somehow got into me and influenced my approach to work, despite not being aware of the disaster until many years later. But somehow it influenced me subconsciously into developing the kind of work that I did. So I just wanted to dedicate that, really, because of the influence that Chernobyl and the Ukraine have had on me in my personal life as well as the disasters they're currently experiencing. So it took a long time for me to actually realise that my work was more than landscape. It was intended to be an emotional connection where I used the landscape as self in a way, and particularly this set of Polaroids is called Breathing, purely because of the natural fallout that occurred during Chernobyl and the obsession that I have with trees. And there's a quote by Joseph Beuys that resonates with me quite deeply, stating that plants and trees are our outer lungs, and without them we would have no air for our inner lungs. And that's just something that really is deeply rooted in me and influences my work heavily. The idea of using landscape or sight as a reflection of self led me down a path of using text along with imagery, but using the imagery in a much more subtle way than the text actually indicates it to be. So the text is slightly more sinister and the imagery is a little bit prettier, if you like. It just depends on your state of mind, really. And the state of mind is something that came to me quite late on in my practice. I really didn't know what my work was about. I would tell people that it was just landscape until I realized that it was actually my connection to mental health and well-being and my use of my art practice as a form of therapy, and the use of text with the imagery, or moving image in this case. I just want to attempt to create at least a feeling of limbo, something that can be calm for some people juxtaposed against something that causes anxiety, such as the flashing image in the bottom film. Move on from this. The idea of text, images, and mark making is something that I use on a much more private scale. I use them more sketchbook-based pieces, and drawing is something that is very expansive to not just the medium of pencil on pen. It can be mark making, or it can be used in photography or film, or even sculpture in Rita's case. And this as well led me to my automative drawing piece in the gallery. These are sort of abstract sections of the work, and this is how it's installed at the gallery. The automative drawing came about in early 1920s through the Surrealist movement, and something that many artists use to inform their practice and often inform their paintings. These small drawings that are done automatically without thought are often developed into larger scale paintings or other works. This image is a Polaroid of myself and my brother. Family is something that's very important to me, and occasionally I take my work, my practice into a bit more performative approach, and this is such example that uses a little bit more of a performative thing. I never really wanted to capture just landscape or portraiture, but I wanted to use these images and things that I capture in a much more personal and emotional ways. And this is my brother as a child, and this really inspired me when I came across it, because her eyes are bright, full of love. Her smile is just cheeky like she is. And I get all of my traits through her. And the bottom image is two portraits split in half. And I am no doubt my brother's brother, seen in the portrait, in the Polaroid, and my mother's son, seen in that bottom picture. There's no denying that. But that original photo booth image of my mum as a child really piqued my interest in developing a series of works that we've seen here that take that photo strip that I created through the photo booths, but we're a family that's been through trauma, and many families often go through traumas, and this is my expression of such traumas, really. They're called anxiety portraits because they are deeply rooted in my family history and what we've dealt with. This is a much more detailed version of what I have in the thing. These are semi-performative as well, but they try to depict the struggles that individuals go through and bring to surface the violence of such issues as trauma and potentially abuse or other such negative things that often we experience individually in silence and in darkness. And that's me. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'll pass you back over to Menna.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Anthony. Thank you, Anthony. That was a very whistle-top tour of what you've done for this exhibition, but it definitely did give an overview and a very good one at that, and also gave us all an insight into your workings and what's going on when you're doing your work. And it's very, I can't think of words tonight, even more than usual. It's very, I mean, we all feel very honoured that you share that stuff and that you can feel comfortable enough to share that, and that you have realised that in your work as well, which you've said before to me, that has been a help to understand that as well, isn't it? So I don't know if anybody's got any questions or comments that they want to do in the audience here or on the Zoom. Alice?
What does that mean? I don't understand it, but as I grow my practice understanding that things are supposed to be looked at first and not understood straight away, and especially your expressions now are mindful and look at what to me. So thank you.
Diolch, Anna. Your brother says that you've got a very handsome brother. Thank you. Oh dear. Okay, if that's the case, we'll wait until the end again, unless anybody's got anything else to say. But thank you very much, Anthony. Oh, there we go. Hi, Peter.
I just struggling to hear some people, but some others I can hear. I think I don't know what's going on, but can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I I visited the exhibition. I really thought it's really powerful, and I just, with Anthony's experience and communication of abandoned and connection with the environment, and the titling, a turbulent. It was halfway through when I saw a turbulent calm, and I thought that was kind of a seminal moment of my journey around the exhibition, because I felt that there was an underlying sort of real sort of struggle and violence in a way, yet there was this total calm in the environment. And it was just an observation, but I've got a garden out here and it's a bit like that. It's a bit like a war zone. Some days it's really calm, but it's a violent place. And I just wondered if Anthony could sort of mention something between that beauty of nature, or the contemplative space of nature, and those sort of feelings that we are all well, not all maybe, but some have, maybe more than others, in that kind of turmoil of experiencing inner self and growing up. I mean,
yeah, I've got a script that I wrote and didn't read any of it. But in the script, I do mention a bit more about the environments that I encountered when I was younger. And it was the juxtaposition between the man-made environment, like factories or buildings, that were abandoned, and that nature then retakes that environment once it's abandoned. That was something that really piqued my interest and continued my journey in my practice for years. And when I started to study many years ago, my tutor, Mick Brown, who's an amazing painter, told me about Anton Kiefer, and his work just resonated with me and continues to do so. But there was a quote by him, he paraphrases from the Bible, and the quote is, "Over your city's grass will grow." And that is something that's so deeply powerful. It's a quote from the Bible, Isaiah 34:13, I think. The paraphrase of it is just perfect as a sentence, and it really captures what I tried to do in my work. When people would ask me what my work was about, and I'd tell them that it was urban landscape or contemporary landscape or something like that, it never quite felt true. And only in the past few years, when I realized that my work was deeper than just landscape, that I was actually referencing myself and my family and my experiences through the tactile qualities that I found in the site. That is something that was mind-blowing for me personally, because I actually, for the first time, understood my practice and the beauty of nature along hand in hand with the man-made environments, and our forcing ourselves onto nature is something that will continue to interest me. And the fact that I was born in 1986 on Chernobyl disaster had happened, and their abandonment of Pripyat, just finding something that piqued my interest like that to reveal something that I had already been experiencing by going to these environments was perfect, because, and you know, to be in the same year as that happened was really quite emotional and powerful. And I'm glad that you got the calm and the sort of violence in the exhibition, because it's something that's true in all three of our works.
Yeah.
And that struggle of mental health and our well-being, and trying to use our own experiences to colour the works, as well as I've lost what I was going to say.
It's not just me, it's catching and watching.
It's just something that we all use. We use that violence or struggle in our practice, but they can often become beautiful or pleasant to look at. They don't necessarily represent the violence. It's just the concept that's come from that, if that makes sense to you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Did that answer your question, Peter?
Yeah, yeah. I just found the titling and some of the kind of experiences, the videos, the environments that you experience as you go through were just really kind of calm but moving, in a sense, turmoil inside at the same time as calmness. But yeah, it was really, the exhibition was really good, powerful. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. If there's no other questions for now or comments, we shall move on to the last but not least, Brian, who has got his own presentation over there in his own laptop. So Anthony can get a bit more, but he's just going to put it up on our screen here. That's what's going on here. So I'm just going to natter a bit. But I didn't know Brian before this exhibition, but I'm really excited that you were a part of it and sort of got to know you and got to know your work through it. So I'm going to let you talk about it a bit more, Brian. Okay.
Thank you. So hopefully I can share the screen. So, okay. So so my journey is a different one. Can you see and hear okay? Yeah. I was born in Essex, by the river, the estuary, and this is an image, if you can see that okay, of the river taken a few months ago when I visited for the first time in 2 years my mum and dad, who still live down there. This is the calm aspect of the sea, that kind of that Peter was kind of talking about. But that encounter between sea and land, it's very much a part of kind of the where I grew up in Essex. Very much a part of the kind of the experience of living there. The kind of where I took this was actually on Canby Island, which is a reclaimed piece of land taken from the sea by Dutch engineers back in the 17th century. So these two images side by side, the one on the left is, you might recognise, that's taken on Newborough Beach. And my journey towards meeting Ant and Rita actually probably began on this beach in 2019, before I started the MA at Glyndŵr with them, where in the midst of quite severe depression and anxiety, I was here with my family and had a kind of desperate moment on this beach, which kind of proved to be a bit of a revelation for me with regard to having to face certain things about myself and what I needed to do. And one of those was to return to artwork in a different kind of way, in a much more intensive and purposive kind of way. The other kind of on the right hand side is the tanks, the fuel depots that kind of line that part of the coast of the estuary on Essex and Kent sides. And in fact, there's a sunken World War II ship called the Richard Montgomery, which is on the Kent side of the Thames, which has hundreds of thousands of pounds of American explosives still lying at the bottom of the river. And if that kind of ever goes up, and the wreck is in quite an unstable state, then it will take part of the Kent coast and probably part of the Essex coast with it. So for me, the sea is a kind of place of encounter, just like landscape with Anthony, or with myself in a way. And so I'm always drawn back to that place of encounter, that place of making. These are the kind of ink sketches that I did down in Essex a couple of years ago, where I just went to the beach with my dad and stood there with him and just tried to get kind of impressions, and that kind of making feeds into the kind of images that you see in the work that's in the exhibition. And these are monoprints that I took one inspired by a journey to Aberystwyth, where we saw the murmuration of the birds above the pier. So for me, that kind of the beach isn't kind of just an in-between space. It's a kind of space between the past and the future. It's a space where something opens up. It's part of the journey out and the journey back, but you're kind of in between. And sometimes that can be that you're lost in between, but also it can be a place where potential happens, a place where another kind of you is developed. So these are two pages from The Grace of Wreckage, which is the kind of the major piece that I have in the exhibition, which is they are pages from a Penguin 60 version of Sinbad the Sailor, which I treated in the manner of Tom Phillips's The Humorment, to tell a different story. Sinbad's story, probably it's a typical mythic story of seagoing. He's shipwrecked again and again and again, and he ends up on the shore, usually with very little in the way of money, clothing, or anything else, and kind of finds his way back home. The Odyssey is a very similar kind of story, where the sea becomes not only the kind of the space of passage between one place and another, but also it's a dangerous space. It's a dangerous encounter, because you can be washed up in all manner of places. So these are kind of, I use ink largely, all kind of different kinds of ink. Payne's grey is one of my favourite things to use when using the sea, with different blues and whites. You can see a bit of pencil here on the left-hand side as well. What I try to do is, when I'm looking at the pages, to try to think about what phrases or words come into my eye. There's a mixture of narrative and abstraction in a way. Each page kind of stands alone as almost a visual poem, but they are in a kind of sequence, and they do tell a kind of story. So there's always a kind of balance between visual showing, in a way, in between the aesthetic qualities of the actual image, and the textual quality of what the kind of the words say. And the two have a kind of connection, but there might not be a direct or illustrative connection. There might be something else going on here, which I try to explore. One of the things you can see at the top of this image here, an interesting kind of a cargo from Basra, is I like to not erase totally the language that isn't being highlighted. So there is this kind of layering effect. There's this kind of quality of a bit like Rita, really. There's a textural kind of quality to it, where you can see the weave, you can see layers, which provides some more kind of interest and depth. And also, I suppose there's a kind of slightly enigmatic quality about it then, because you know, it exposes the kind of decisions that I've made, that there are other decisions that could be made with this particular page to tell a different kind of story. Although most of the pages are contained within one, this is one where I decided to move across and mount them and move across the page to kind of connect up two images. So the story that's being told here is that someone who washes up on the beach from a shipwreck, he kind of wanders into the interior of the island and encounters this kind of a corpse pit, I suppose, not really a graveyard, somewhere where corpses in winding sheets have been dumped, and it's meant to be a kind of mythic or you know, slightly oblique story, where that idea that the traveller has encountered or gone beyond, in some senses, the space of life and into the realm of death, and encounters these endless winding sheets with other voyagers who have landed up there, and then these apparitions, the ghosts of the sea, the crowd of men, the sea, of course, which takes life as well as gives. Salt water is amniotic; it's the womb, but it's also it's also the place where, you know, men and women lose their lives, and children too, of course. So that kind of haunted quality of the sea, the haunted quality of the journey, is something I wanted to kind of bring up, or bring into relief in this particular sequence. That there's something to do with the bounds of existence, and the kind of the limits of the self, that identity becomes itself under challenge in this sequence of writing. So as I said, my method is taken from Tom Phillips's A Humament, which is a very long project he started back in 1966, where he took a Victorian novel by an author called W.H. Mallock, and over many decades has treated hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands now, of pages, and sometimes going back and reworking the same page. And even though that says the final edition, it isn't. He's still working on it, which is something which I wasn't aware of until someone kind of told me that that is still a live project. But there's something kind of endlessly productive about this, I think, about the idea of collage, of reusing the words of others. And I think for me, that's something that I find really inspiring in a way about this method, is that it is kind of my voice that's coming out in the words, but it's also not. It's the voice of someone else. And what I'm doing is kind of channeling it and rechanneling it to tell a different kind of story. So my main kind of writings or versions of this have been through the work of H.G. Wells, but kind of the Grace of Wreckage sequence is very much mediating my thoughts and experience about the sea and living by the sea, but also in living in Wales, as someone who has lived here for over 20 years, but is an incomer, and I'm aware of the fact that I am. But the kind of the relation, therefore, between England and Wales for me is very, very apparent. And in TROIICA with Rita and Anthony, I think this is something that we've always been aware of and discussed a lot, with regard to how we work together and our collaborations, but what we bring to the collaboration. And one of the things that kind of connects up me and Anthony, I suppose, is that idea of he was talking about Chernobyl. One of the places that I've constantly revisited over the last 5 years or so is Trwy, the decommissioned Magnox nuclear power station, which for me kind of symbolises in its Basil Spence designed English castle looking concrete buildings here. It symbolises that idea of English power and extraction of resource from Wales. Of course, it's just next door to Llyn, and kind of the story that we know about what happened to Drwy and that kind of use of Welsh resource being taken to England. But this one is kind of Trans-Vanithora seems to be kind of particularly pregnant as a symbol of this. And of course, there are other Magnox reactors, one at Wolver, and also dotted elsewhere around the Irish Sea, where these plants were used to make plutonium, essentially. They're very dirty reactors. They're kind of Cold War entities, and their plutonium was obviously used as fissile material for nuclear warheads. Didn't last very long as a reactor. I think it opened in the mid-60s, and it was closed by the end of the 1980s. And of course, it's going to take another 100 years for it to clean up. So there's a kind of particular symbolism for me about this particular place. And I wanted to kind of put it next to kind of one of the books that's there in the exhibition, which is one I made during lockdown, where I was trying to kind of use the resources of locality to just to kind of I suppose to kind of rethink my relationship to this borderland which I live in. I live near Llangollen, so where we can look out and we look over the Shropshire Plain. Essentially, we're right on the border. Dinas Bran, and then kind of the Dee Valley kind of goes behind us, back westwards into Wales. So kind of that meeting point, live right by the aqueduct, famous Telford aqueduct, which is just slipped my mind for some reason. The Roe, the canal, it's a kind of junction at this particular point of Wales historically, and in terms of its resources, which are kind of part of the history of this particular part of Wales and its landscape. So this is the final image, and it's from the very beginning of the beach sequence film that's in the exhibition. And this was taken on the beach at Llangrannog, where the whole film was shot, in Ceredigion, a place where we've gone regularly. And it's, as you can see, two vapor trails moving across the sky, kind of above the beach as I'm standing on the beach here. Llangrannog has become a kind of a place of escape, but also a place of contemplation. And kind of a couple of years ago, I wrote an essay about the way that sound works in relationship to the sea, and it was largely based on Llangrannog and my experience of being there. So for someone kind of who's come to art practice relatively late, or come back to art practice relatively late, and my experiences of being in Wales, although kind of not being born here, places around the coast like Llangrannog or Newborough, that encounter between sea and land are really important to me in my practice. And I think kind of part of the next phase of what we want to do is to kind of move into kind of thinking about site and materials, and the way in which place and materials can work together in more direct ways. So that's me done. Thank you very much for listening.
You're getting a round of applause here, but you can't hear it. But,
Okay, thank you.
well done. Thank you. Again, really interesting. And then now that we've heard from everyone, I think everyone can agree that there is a very clear similarity, or a very clear sort of things that do join up within all of our art practice. Like obvious things would be things like, you work with site or landscape to reflect on other things and things like that, and how you work and how you approach your works and stuff like that. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments they would like to do, either here live in the audience or on the screens. Rachel, we got just someone here in the audience here, so Rachel's just going to say something.
Yeah, all of your work is super fascinating, and I can see the difference between them. But I was actually really interested in how you influence each other. So this is like both of them all really well, how does working together affect each other's work?
Just so everybody can hear, because I don't know how well you can hear Rachel in the audience. She asked, how everyone influences each other within the group. So I'm just going to hand it over to Rita. I'm going to say Rachel every time I speak about Rita. Rita and Anthony here, and to Brian.
Personally, I think it's all the conversations. It's like being on a roller coaster when we're together, because the images that go through, I wish I could record my mind when we're talking, because things come to us. Yeah, and we spur each other on, really. We can relate a lot to each other. We know, yeah, we've sort of researched the same artist all along as well, so we know we can converse about similar aspects of different people's works. I wish I could talk like Brian, obviously. I know my Welsh accent's awful. I would prefer to speak Welsh now, but yeah, it's nice to influence each other and spur each other on, I think.
Very much in conversation.
Yeah. Anthony, what do you?
It sort of all started with the conversation, and a sort of meet and greet with Brian on the first day of our studies in Wrecsam. Just allowed us all to actually go around, introduce each other to each other, and having a piece of work that you had with you physically that you can go through a sketchbook or see a painting. And the conversations that we struck up just by looking at the work in the sketchbooks, and how the tactile quality of sketchbooks that we had with us just spoke to us in different ways, not specifically one piece or anything, but as the sketchbook itself, and having all kinds of different approaches to different pages. Myself and Brian's works are sort of quite similar aesthetically, or can be seen quite aesthetically similar, whereas our works compared to Rita's vary greatly, but the themes and the approaches and concepts and ways of thinking and the experiences that we bring to the works, we can always find something that resonates with our own individual experiences or individual lives, that just, like Peter says, spur us on together, and I think we influence each other as much as we do reflect on things.
Yeah, my work's mostly visual, and I think I find it very difficult to express myself academically. And that's where our conversations with Brian come into it, you know, and then with my conversations with Anthony, we can speak in Welsh, in the same language. And I think things are expressed differently when you can speak in your own native tongue. And yeah, it's the reassurance as well that we get from each other that, yeah, I can understand where you're coming from with that and all that, really.
The text pieces as well, like Brian's work on the Grace of Record, despite it being in English, my approach to using the text in the works, not particularly the earlier ones, but the later ones, I tried to use a much more of a visual poetry type of thing, or visual appeal like Brian's, works on the books that he manipulates. I don't know if you want to say a bit more about that, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I think conversation is kind of exactly where it started, isn't it? Actually, I remember the first time I met you, Anthony, was is literally you had a sketchbook, and I was kind of came over and asked you to kind of talk about what you're doing with the sketchbook, because the book for me is such an important thing. But I think as we got to know each other, those connections to do with upbringing and class, and and our shared interests and values, but also the things that are different about us as well. I think kind of, as you said, kind of, Anthony, that Rita's work kind of is drawing from compatible kind of feelings and things we want to explore, but has a very different kind of expression. I think those differences are part of the productive conversation between us, aren't they? I think kind of you and I work in more parallel, but you have a very different set of connections, I think, to me, with regard to where we're coming from. So all of these things mean that, I think in a sense, that's where really productive collaboration comes from, doesn't it? It comes from the ability to find points of connection and collaboration, but also there being different things that we all bring to the conversation with each other, and those then provide the means by which change happens. That we kind of different ideas and different practices and different materials and all this kind of stuff. That's where all that comes from.
I'm so happy that Brian actually put so happy that Brian actually put the image of the Ffurfiwyd power plant as well, because that obviously touches upon my connection with Chernobyl, but also the connection with Ffurfiwyd itself. From a family point of view, my granddad actually came from Ffurfiwyd, so that's another plane that we have a connection with, which was totally incidental. I think Brian was developing that work before we actually spoke about it. There's all kinds of threads that join us all three together subconsciously, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to continuing our collaboration and actually pieces together, not just individually as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking for some more residencies, really. It's so. Together. Yeah.
Thank you.
On mute. Sorry, I realised I was on mute. I can't cope with all this. There's too much technology and too many things, too many avenues. I can't cope. I was saying, does anybody have any more comments or questions they want to say about the exhibition work or the presentations tonight by the three artists?
I'd like to thank you all for coming and spending some time with us.
See, I can't cope. I don't know if anybody wants to say anything else, because yeah, otherwise we just want to thank you all, and thanks especially to Anthony, Rita and Brian for all their work and for getting yourselves ready for tonight. And for, yeah, I'm sorry for my lack of ability when it comes to technology. Yeah, so this is the last weekend that it's on for, so it'll be all open tomorrow and Saturday 10 till 3. And if you're here on Saturday, Rita and Anthony will be here because they're doing art workshops with children, which I'm really looking forward to. But otherwise, yeah, please do come over and have a look if you can. But if not, Anthony's done some filming work of it and stuff like that, haven't you? And this will be edited heavily and then shared along with the other talks that we've done. But in the meantime, yeah, diolch yn fawr iawn. And I don't know if anybody's got anything else before they want to go. No, diolch yn fawr iawn, pawb.